The great Frances Martel is here with us. Frances, long time no talk. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm just really relieved to hear that your wife's doing well and everything's good. It sounded really scary yesterday.
Well, we bailed on you. Frances. I felt bad for that too, but
That's
thanks.
fine. Bail on me every time.
Thanks for. I'm like, wife, I gotta go. Frances is on the phone. I gotta talk to Frances.
Talk about South Korea.
Dr. Korka's up next. We gotta go. Well, thank you, Frances. Okay, first things first, and we have a lot to do. And let's save some time at the end to talk about the Village People. I have to, okay?
Oh, awesome.
I wasn't planning on it, but if you go to Frances's Twitter, when someone goes on like a tweet thread about something, you know they have a passion for it. So we must do that coming up. But first, what in the world happened in South Korea and why?
Well, President Yoon Suk-yeol came out on TV Tuesday night and said, I am imposing martial law because the North Korean communists have infiltrated our government, and the Democratic Party, which it's also called that in South Korea, the left-wing party, the Democrats are obstructing all of my proposals in the National Assembly, and it's necessary to weed out subversive anti-government elements. So this is terrifying, and it came out of absolutely nowhere. I read that headline. I read South Korean newspapers every day. I woke up looking for news about Syria. I just woke up thinking, let's see what, new disaster is happening in Syria. And I opened the computer, and every headline is South Korea's under martial law. And I'm just like, what? And everyone else has the same reaction.
You're like, that's the good Korea. Like, what are we talking about? Like, it took me a minute.
What happened? And Yoon is a lifelong civil servant. He was a prosecutor. He's a conservative. He has the record of a pretty normal politician. There was no real indication that he was going to go this unhinged, right? And that's true not just for me half a world away. If you look at the responses from his own party, the People Power Party, which is the conservative party, the head of the party came out immediately and said, we absolutely don't support this. We have no idea what's going on, and we're going to protest against our own president because this is crazy. So then the National Assembly has the constitutional right to vote against martial law in the event that it's imposed. And so they did so. But the trick here is that once martial law is imposed, political activity is illegal. So in order for the National Assembly to gather and vote against martial law, the lawmakers had to essentially elbow past heavily armed soldiers that were surrounding the assembly, the legislative floor. And so there were all these crazy videos of scuffles between, these young, heavily armed soldiers and these congressmen, essentially, who are, 65-year-old Korean guys in suits, just like climbing over walls and over gates and like elbowing through the doors, completely crazy. But you could kind of tell the military's heart wasn't into it because the older congressmen won. They got in there, they voted against it, and then they, and a little while later, Yoon announces that martial law is over. And Yoon has not made a public appearance since. Now he's kind of pretending nothing happened, and he's about to get impeached. So
listen, we've all had bad days, Frances. You know what I mean? Things happen sometimes. Let's let bygones be bygones with that whole martial law thing. Wait, so when I heard there was martial law and I read what what happens with that, I assumed, because it said like no protesting and stuff like that. I didn't know that also meant no official, like in our words, Congress. Like that Congress can't even meet.
Yeah, no political activity means no political activity, like not just normal people, but lawmakers. So they defied that. And there's my favorite crazy video is Lee Jae-myung, who's the head of the Democrats, and he's the guy who ran against President Yoon for president, and he lost by 1% of the vote. He filmed himself climbing over this massive fence and then scaling a wall to get into the National Assembly, and he just live streamed it on YouTube. So the images are completely crazy, and the sentiment in South Korea seems to be that this isn't who we are. This is, we're not this kind of a country. We're not a coup country. And, on Twitter, a lot of people compared this to what former President Castillo tried to do in Peru, where he declared martial law and said that he was going to rule by decree, and he was arrested by the end of the day. But Castillo is a communist, like an openly Leninist communist. For this kind of very normal establishment conservative politician to just come out and declare martial law, I wouldn't say it's completely unprecedented in human history, but we haven't seen anything like this in a very long time.
Wow, how weird. Okay, so what's the moral of the story for you of this?
I think the moral here is that, well, first of all, you're having an opposition legislature be irritating to you as a conservative leader is not grounds to install martial law in a civilized society. Okay. That's not acceptable. And two, if you have a democracy, fight for it. And that's everybody. The fact that the Conservative Party leadership was the first to come out and say, we don't support our own president because this is crazy, that shows you just how robust that democracy is, just how strong those institutions are. So even though Yoon himself really terrified, the international community and his own people by doing this, the fact that even his own party came out and said, we want nothing to do with this, I think that shows that South Korea is actually in a very good place with their institutions. And it could have gone really badly. I didn't see a single report of anybody injured, much less anybody killed. So this could have been much, much worse.
Is there something to be made of something I'm fascinated by a lot in all totalitarian regimes, which is where the leader will say, hey, military, do something horrific, and they do it with the excuse of, well, it's just my job. Because I was thinking of these soldiers under martial law, as you described, but then you got to the point, well, they were kind of half-hearted about the whole thing. But, the fact that that could even happen, where the commander-in-chief, I don't know how the system works over there, but they're like, you military do this. And the military is like, okay. Is there something there?
Yeah, and the military did it, on paper, right? But what this is my speculation, is just I'm watching these videos of these old, flubby congressmen winning fights with, military guys with machine guns. And I'm thinking these are 19, 20-year-old fit guys who are not winning against these lawmaker guys in suits. And I'm thinking if they wanted to win this fight, if their heart was in it, this would not be the way things turn out. And it reminded me a lot of Venezuela, where we've had multiple times where Maduro has just shut down the National Assembly and sent in his National Guard to attack congressmen. And the images of that are congressmen tear gas, people with broken noses, blood everywhere. That's what it looks like when the military actually respects the commander-in-chief's orders to attack lawmakers. This didn't look like that. And that makes me think, and then there's the fact that South Korea has mandatory military conscription, right? So there's, 5 of 7 members of BTS are soldiers right now. And those, that means that there's a lot of people in the military who don't want to be in the military. And I think that definitely changed the degree to the intensity of the response to the president's orders here.
Very interesting. Is there any truth to this story that this Dior handbag that was given to the president's wife as a gift illegally, a $2,200 handbag, that it was some sort of corruption thing? Is that a part of the story or no?
I think it is, with the caveat that, Lee, the head of the Democrats, also is being prosecuted for corruption. So the South Korean political establishment on both sides is sort of hopelessly corrupt, not in the, Brazilian Operation Car Wash way where they're taking public funds. It's more like they've all taken bribes from somebody. They're all affiliated with weird cults. It's a thing in South Korean politics, and that's why if you look at the approval ratings of every politician, they're all on the floor. Like, everyone has low approval ratings. The people don't like anybody. And one of the theories for why Yoon did this is that the Democrats were trying to impeach him partly for the Dior handbag scandal. And that has been tremendously embarrassing to Yoon. His wife has basically disappeared from the public eye. And no one is even denying that she took the bribe, it's basically a given. The question is, she took one handbag. What did the Democrats take? So that's kind of the degree of the discussion.
I just think it's amazing that rises to the level of corruption. Like in America, if someone took a $2,000 handbag, I don't think we'd blink at that. So I respect the South Koreans, thinking that is corruption. That's cute. Okay, our time is limited. Anything else in Asia that we should talk about before we head over to South and Latin America? Anything else standing out these days?
Well, I think the North Koreans being a force in the Ukrainian the Ukrainian war with Russia, I think that's a big, big narrative that we should be watching. Of course, now we're all distracted with South Korea, and even North Korean state media is making fun of South Korea. I just read before coming on with you. But the fact that there are reports of North Korean soldiers basically invading Europe, that's a big, big problem. And the person who was championing the most that Europe should be afraid of North Korea was Yoon. So now he's completely discredited. And he was, last July, he was at a NATO summit telling people, NATO has to care about North Korea because they're coming for you. And now they're there. And so I'm very worried about who picks up that mantle and who gets Europe to take North Korea seriously. Because, again, the top voice for this has been severely compromised. And I do think it's a very big problem. I think he's absolutely right that North Korea is a threat to Europe.
Interesting.